Good morning, Christy. I wasn't really planning a show just right now, but what the hey? I just ran a little experiment on YouTube, and it is so on point. I can't believe how right we were so early. Just enjoy the mood music. Too bad it cost me so much. Whoever else is here. I look at chat sometimes on Twitch, but I live stream to Twitch and YouTube simultaneously. Hello, Peter. So, Peter, have you seen Jeffrey Epstein walking around Israel? If I had to wager money, as I make it very public, I don't believe Jeffrey Epstein died. He may have died after the event, but I suspect that it was a staged death. Now, sometimes one reason to kill somebody, but one reason to stage a death is because the easiest way to get away with killing somebody is to not kill them. Sounds silly, but if you just stage the death, get the relatives on board, it's a national security issue, have the right payoffs, provide a new identity. What happens is if somebody is killed, there's always going to be a friend, a lover, somebody that's upset, an inquiring journalist, and it's going to lead to more questions, and then leads to more cover-ups. Easiest thing to do. Does it sound a bit harsh again today? I've been, my hands have been all over the soundboards as I've been moving stuff around. Huh, that's weird. I will try to work on the microphone. Thank you for that. That's weird. So, matter of fact, yeah, it is a little bit harsh. I don't know what dial I moved. That's weird. That should not be balanced like that. Testing 1, 2. I can see one of my outbounds. Testing 1, 2. I think I need to get a little bit of a booster in my headphones. So, what are we talking about here? I posted I'll do the quick background here. I'll turn the mute music off just so, because it's so good I can get distracted by it myself It's amazing. I can get distracted by mood music. Jeffrey Epstein is a part of TED Talk history. He is not the founder of TED Talks. You may have heard, I'm presuming most of my audience is knowing what a TED Talk is doesn't make you a better person. But in the professional world, in the corporate world, the self-healing, holistic medicine, most people know what a TED Talk is. And TED Talks started to become a thing in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And although Jeffrey Epstein is not a founder of TED Talks, his money was used to gather people to attend TED Talks in the late 1990s. This is documented in a New York Times article that came out in 2002 that Jeffrey Epstein would use his own plane for TED Talks. Now, I think at some point, the grown-ups in the room need to start to speak louder and take over this conversation. There will never be any rational, realistic understanding of what Epstein was about so long as the room is dominated by little children yelling things about eating babies and cannibalism. Jeffrey Epstein was not about that. That's a ruse. That's a mythology. That's a throw. Jeffrey Epstein was about ensuring the money goes to the right tech companies that are needed to support the national security agenda. As his career evolved, he got more and more involved in media, messaging, and other things as well. Making sure the right political candidates had the right money. But when Jeffrey Epstein first stepped onto this scene as an investor who had some clout, who had some big clients, it wasn't because he was a good investor. It was because there were people who needed someone who could do the dirty work. And I think that those needs fall upon people like the Rockefeller Institute and Dr. Joshua Lederberg, who passed in 2008. Lederberg was the president of the Rockefeller Institute from 1978 to 1990. Afterwards, the Rockefeller Institute's president was David Baltimore, who also passed recently. David Baltimore is considered to be one of the main mentors of all the mentorship chain of people that do things like, genetic medicine, DNA, mRNA medicine, using HIV technology. I'm not saying that the virology is or isn't a mythology. I'm just saying he's the one who continues to facilitate and support and repeat that messaging. Anyways, the mentorship chain at the Rockefeller Institute is very clearly dominated by transfection and transformation of cell cultures. It has to be, just based upon those two names. What we're trying to say here is that Joshua Lederberg was so deep in the national security of the United States of America and working. He was already a Nobel laureate in his 30s. He was already leading NASA's program regarding the search for extraterrestrial life or exobiology, the study of biology off planet, the monitoring of bacterial and other potential microorganisms that could be on craft returning back to land or ocean on planet Earth after being sent into the stratosphere somewhere. All of that stuff was led by Lederberg. Some people may say that was Carl Sagan. It's like, well, Carl Sagan was mentored by Lederberg. So while working with NASA in the 1960s and 1970s, Lederberg transitioned from being a very, very good leading bacteriologist to also someone that had the full picture. Jeffrey Epstein's first main arrest came in 1981, and I think it was identified that he's someone who potentially could be valuable to people that were working the big agenda. And the big agenda, of course, is the human genome, taking control of the evolution of the human species, whatever that means. That could mean understanding it. That could mean actually taking control of its own evolution or steering it in ways which it's already designed to be steered. I'm not sure which of those two Lederberg believed in, and he may have actually always been in a position where he believed that both were feasible. Maybe that wasn't even the right question to ask, but either way, if you're working at that level of NASA, that means that you're also ultimately working with the top levels of the United States military. What this means is Dr. Joshua Lederberg most likely was the most important mentor of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I titled today's show, and welcome, Pete. Hello, V. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for the heads up on it. I don't want to talk too much shop, but I have headphones and I have a switcher where I can listen to my sound output at multiple points. There's not many podcasters or broadcasters, and I don't like to call myself a podcaster because I podcast, but primarily I podcast my research and my analysis. I don't. I'm not a podcaster that does some research on the side. I'm predominantly a research and analyst. If you look at my old descriptions of my channel, my vision was to be a researcher and analyst whose work could be used by other podcasters and by other analysts. That was my goal. I didn't know that there were no other people that were going to use it, that most of the voices that were already getting boosted were on the payroll of the national security. I didn't know that. Anyways, when my headphones are not just for sound control, I'm actually actively listening to myself. One of the reasons why I use all analog equipment is so there's no delay, so that when I'm listening to my own audio, I don't have to hear it with a delay. So I'm doing real-time audio monitoring as I talk, as I play music, as I play audio from videos, and I'm having a little bit of a volume control with my my microphone that I need to work on. I just got a new microphone arm, and as I showed yesterday in the video, I moved a bunch of things around in my studio, supposedly cable cleanup. And sometimes cable cleanup can make things worse because you can introduce some noise if something isn't plugged in right, or if you have two wires running too close. It's always, but anyways, thank you for that. So if Joshua Lederberg is someone who's providing steering to Jeffrey Epstein, while Jeffrey Epstein is at the Rockefeller Institute, and I think Lederberg also is one of the main reasons why Jeffrey Epstein met Les Wexner. I believe that there's a fake backstory being floated around. It's been floated around for many years right now about Jeffrey Epstein bumping into an insurance agent on a plane, and one thing led to the next, and he got to meet Les Wexner and control Les Wexner's money. But in reality, I think Les Wexner had his billions under advisement by the national security of the United States of America, which includes people such as Joshua Lederberg, going back to the 1980s. It's one of the reasons why the Battelle Corporation in Columbus, Ohio, which plays a very large role in identifying whether or not there is life on outer space rocks, outer space craft, identifying life on the moons that are, Europa. Battelle Corporation plays a large role in this stuff. And the term exobiology, it's not that Joshua Lederberg worked with exobiology. It's that Joshua Lederberg created the word. The word exobiology, the study of off-world microbes, is Joshua Lederberg. The word microbiome, the whole world of what happens in the gut and makes the life of mammals possible, Joshua Lederberg coined that term. You ever hear the word plasmid? People love talking about plasmids in DNA medicine. The word plasmid was made by Joshua Lederberg. We're living in Lederberg's world right now, and nobody knows it. He is, I would say, in fact, far more influential than Albert Einstein. This test of whether or not Lederberg is the smartest person, I don't think that's best test of it. I believe he was very, very intelligent, very, very intelligent. But I think he had other unique capabilities and perhaps back life experiences. And I think the role of his dad is something I still don't fully understand, but I believe that that played a role as well in making sure he got the opportunities that matched his capabilities. And Jeffrey Epstein's rise, I believe, was made possible by Joshua Lederberg. And I bring this up now because I did a test this morning. I showed a video of Joshua Lederberg, Kary Mullis. I'll review who Kary Mullis is, but many considered him to be the inventor of PCR, but he's not. And Jeffrey Epstein. I did a 3-minute video short. I posted it on YouTube, and after an hour, it had 4 views. And I'm like, how is that possible? It has all of these amazing topics in one video. So I reposted the video with a different title, unrelated words. I said something like underwear, Dunkin' Donuts, and something else. And you know what? It almost got no views. An hour later, I reposted the same video again with an unrelated title, and I deleted all of everything I said. I only used the video itself, just the picture, and I just said gibberish. I went blah 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 for 3 minutes, and within a few seconds, it already had more views. So the testing, combined with other testing that I've done, leads me to this fascinating conclusion. Joshua Lederberg is more censored on YouTube than Jeffrey Epstein. I could have just said that in my very first sentence, but I'm going to repeat that again. The phrase Joshua Lederberg is more censored on YouTube than Jeffrey Epstein. If I do videos with Jeffrey Epstein in the title, I can get hundreds of views. If I do videos with Lederberg in the title, I get very few views. If I do a video with Jeffrey Epstein and Joshua Lederberg in the title, I get very few views. How is that possible? Everything right now, Epstein gets watched. Everything. So just by putting Joshua Lederberg into a title on YouTube with Jeffrey Epstein, that video will get hidden. I'm not saying it can't be found. What I'm saying is it won't get promoted randomly to new people. And there's many people that subscribe to my channel that won't see it. So let's continue on here, because what I wanted to highlight was that there is a New York Times article. If we go to my Jeffrey Epstein page, which is messy, I'm sorry. There's a New York Times article from October of 2002 called 3 Days in the Future. And it's about TED conferences. And in here, there's a little bit of a history on TED conferences, TED Talk conferences. And let's see here. Of course, there's a reference in here to September 11th, 2001. That there's talking here about Richard Dawkins, but there's a little bit of a history of TED Talks in here. It's hard to find when I'm actually looking at the picture of it. TED has become the place, perhaps, the only place, where, nestled in the warm bosom of fellow elites, luminaries bear their deepest passions and innermost souls. I'm sorry, it doesn't go on like this. Kary Mullis, the Nobel Prize-winning chemist, spoke of his childhood dreams of launching a frog into orbit and how he figured out how to do it in his backyard. Joseph Penninger, an immunologist and genetic researcher, confessed that the reason he became a geneticist may have been to do with an adolescent mouse phobia. Where is it? I'm sorry. I'm actually going to have to look at the text of the article itself. I'm having a hard time finding what I want to read. So they reviewed some literary works by. It happened here one night. I guess they're talking about someplace out in California over chicken and polenta at the annual private dinner given by New York literary agent, John Brockman, formerly called the Millionaires and Billionaires Diner, after the rich techies who traditionally flocked to TED. There were still a few members of the endangered species scattered about, among them Nathan Myhrvold, the retired Microsoft technology officer who gave an electrifying discourse at the 1997 TED about dinosaur sex, and Jeffrey Epstein, a financial advisor to billionaires who flew a bunch of TEDsters to Monterey in his Boeing 727 outfitted with mink and sable throws and a high-altitude lunch catered by Le Cirque 2000. The point here is that this article makes a suggestion that Jeffrey Epstein himself, although he's not a founder of TED Talk, was involved in some of the earlier TED Talks and making it so that TED Talks were lavish and well-funded, and people wanted to go to them because it would be the cool place to go if you're a tech person. Of course, this is exactly the type of event that someone like a Jeffrey Epstein, who has the responsibility of making sure money goes to genetic companies, DNA vaccine companies, companies that provide technologies for electrical grids, telecommunications, chipsets, video cards, all of this stuff, surveillance, cameras, all of the technology that's going to be required for advancing the evolution of the human species, companies which are making products which would never be profitable on their own. There need to be people to ensure that the technology executives are seen, that people believe that these technology companies are successful, that money goes to these technology companies even though they're not very profitable, and that people who work at these technologies get paid very well. The entire mythology of super successful startup tech companies needs people like Jeffrey Epstein, not just to steer money to them, but also to make the money available and also to even help with people believing that this mythology is real. So while the stocks on companies like General Motors and other boring stuff like companies that make paper towels has been stuck, these tech companies have been exploding in wealth. I mean, their stock valuations have gone through the roof, and everyone believes that everyone who works with them is so smart and so successful, and it's the way to go, and they must be doing something great. But that's the mythology. It is all a mythology. But without that mythology, the visions that were laid forth about taking control of the evolution of the human species all the way back in the 1960s by the big thinkers at the time, which include Joshua Lederberg even back then, never could have been possible. And this is where Jeffrey Epstein comes into play. But this article here is so fascinating to me because one of the main names here is Kary Mullis. Kary Mullis is a big name here in 2002. And as I tried to show with this still shot here from the 3-minute video I made that was instantly and deeply hidden on every platform on YouTube, while Kary Mullis is presenting at this 2002 conference, probably already having met Jeffrey Epstein. I want to repeat that. This is the hero. This is Mr. PCR technology, Kary Mullis. Kary Mullis is presenting at a TED Talk in February 2002, and he probably got there. He had met at this time or previously Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the little children who are here to facilitate the demise of the United States of America are instantly going to suggest that everybody who ever even saw Epstein must eat children. They're trying to destroy the United States of America with rampant claims of cannibalism and just all kinds of horrible things, which just aren't true, and there's no evidence to back any of it up. And in fact, right now, I'm willing to suspect that Jeffrey Epstein never did anything to a child. And if I'm wrong, guess what? The problem is that the people that want us all focused on Jeffrey Epstein every day ignore the drug epidemic that's killed 1 million Americans, many of them, almost all of them under the age 45, and many of them under the age 18. We have one of the highest rates now of child prostitution in the United States of America because of our drug epidemic and crumbling families. And the podcasters that want everyone focused on Jeffrey Epstein and cannibalism are the very people who are enabling that. I think most podcasters right now are actually participating in a crime that's far worse than anything that Jeffrey Epstein has done. I'm talking about people like who are on Redacted. I'm talking about the Alex Jones Infowars. I'm talking about the Kim Iversons. I'm talking about the Ian Carrolls. These people are participating in crimes which kill people. Their lies kill people. They are more guilty in murder right now than Jeffrey Epstein is. And that's the enemy. That's the enemy right now, is all of those lies. But anyways, getting back to Kary Mullis here and the inventor of the PCR, the thing is that Kary Mullis's PCR technology, he credits to Joshua Lederberg. If you read the 1990 paper that was written by Kary Mullis about how he discovered PCR, he says, clear as day, I did a whole video on it, clear as day, no doubt, 100%, nobody would ever know about Kary Mullis if it wasn't for Joshua Lederberg. In other words, and Kary Mullis was very public about that. What's interesting, though, what's noteworthy here, is that after 9/11, Kary Mullis no longer mentions Joshua Lederberg. Kary Mullis is under orders after 9/11 to never mention Lederberg again. Lederberg is not mentioned once at this entire conference, even though he's one of the most important Americans who ever lived. And I can tell you right now with certainty that as of February 10th, 2026, Joshua Lederberg is a term that's more censored on YouTube than Jeffrey Epstein. Because you can't understand Epstein for real in any credible, useful way without understanding Joshua Lederberg. And that's one of the reasons why my show has been stuck in the mud with respect to views for so long. I was on this very early. In fact, I never would have gotten here if it wasn't for, well, I don't know how I got here. All I know is people said you have to follow the money. And then they started talking about Bill Gates. I learned about Bill Gates. I learned about the history of Microsoft. I learned about the national security groups, which involved the people who really did create Microsoft. And sitting at the round table was a bacteriologist named Joshua Lederberg. And I found that to be that got my curiosity going. If it wasn't for that, I never would have heard of him either. And one thing led to the next. And then I realized that I think Lederberg is the reason why 9/11 happened. I'm going to repeat that. I think Joshua Lederberg is probably the mastermind of 9/11. The United States military was going to be compromised to the point where most of the troops were going to be subjected to an experimental gene therapy vaccine, which was very risky. And based upon the rate of how many were placebos, it could have been the end of the United States as we know it. Joshua Lederberg, having already led NASA's space program, was critical with respect to which is really more about biology than rocketry. Although definitely rocket technology is a big part of it. The United States military was at its riskiest point, and I think the U.S. was in a position where if the U.S. military was going to be biologically weakened, it was going to fall under control or require United Nations police in order to be able to save it. And Lederberg, working with the U.S. military, was one of the reasons why 9/11 happened. It was a preemptive operation. And I believe both Israel and, more importantly, India were the complicit parties in 9/11. There's no no coincidence that the number 2 person at the United Nations was Shashi Tharoor of India. It's no coincidence. All of his books are published by Skyhorse Publishing right now. This is no coincidence, folks. Israel needed U.S. military assistance still, and India knows that the long-term security of Israel is in India's best interest with respect to the Israeli Middle East corridor for India's connection options with Europe and for much of the Americas. So India played a large role in complicity. This is also why when you see whether it be Fox News or InfoWars or George Webb in particular, they put all the focus on Pakistan right now because their job is to put blame on parties which are antagonistic and against the national interest of India. If you go through George Webb's videos, you will find he never mentions, he interviewed one teenage girl from India once, 4,000 videos. How is it possible that you can know anything about national security and never mention the existence of India and blame the drug epidemic on Pakistan, even though all of the traffic mostly comes through India? It's basically like George Webb is a complicit party in all of this mess, and it would make a lot of sense if he was. But anyways, Joshua Lederberg is the key to understanding 9/11. But it's really not about 9/11 in particular. It's about the pursuit of the human genome. It's about understanding that this is a long-term thing which started all the way back 1930s, 1940s with Schrodinger, new ways of thinking about physics, thinking about trying to understand how microbial life, multicellular life worked, and they just got more and more and more power. There were these statements made throughout the 60s that nobody could contest. I mean, geez, if you can take over the evolution of the human species, who cares who has the gold? Seriously, nothing matters after that. Everything else is a joke. These people have oil. They have a little bit of silver or gold. They can catch fish. I mean, who cares? So that's always been at the top. Of course, there's other territorial disputes. There's been religious frictions. There's other things which have happened over time because of this. But when you understand what's really on the top of the stack, it's like, wow, okay. And other things kind of fall behind that. Anyways, knowing that the reason why Kary Mullis was so heavily promoted at that time and was at that TED Talk, and it's Jeffrey Epstein. And as I've said before, knowing that Lederberg, I believe right now, is one of the main people. There were others. Minsky, there's several others. Minsky is a name that comes out from time to time because he was stupid enough to actually go with to the Epstein Island. But, Lederberg was smart enough to keep a low profile. The fact that Lederberg maintained his distance and never mingled with Epstein, the fact that Epstein did a video with Steve Bannon precisely to say that he met Rockefeller without any knowledge, any recognition of Lederberg, it's all you need to know. It's all you need to know. It's all Lederberg. It really is. In some ways, it's almost sad how easy it is to see. And you're going to hear a lot more paranoia right now about Les Wexner. I never wanted to get involved in that because it just seemed to be too riddled with salacious garbage. But then when you realize that the founder of Victoria's Secrets, the business was founded in Stanford, which is exactly in the backyard of Joshua Lederberg, it's like, okay. And then it starts to make sense. Who was ever buying? Nobody buys Victoria's Secret's garbage. It was money laundering from the start. I mean, really, I'm sure some people buy it. They never made them on sales. I mean, come on, there were fake sales. There were probably fake people buying lingerie that was never worn. It was just thrown out. The whole thing was an operation to make Les Wexner richer so he could then use the money to pour into the facilities of the genetics laboratory at the University of Ohio, Columbus, which was used for the DNA vaccines, as well as, give more money back to the community and to Battelle Corporation. And one of the reasons why you'll see all this focus right now on Wexner, and they're going to say he's a pedo and eating children and cannibalism and Satanism, etc., is because they just don't want people to understand. And, of course, you'll notice that almost every single person right now that is so loudly saying all of these crazy things are also, all of them, almost 100%, are calling for the defunding of the U.S. military. And that should be your key. Now, I don't want more wars. But I'll tell you what right now, the people that have done the most harm to me right now is not the U.S. military. They're not the people that I can blame for the deaths in my family right now. So just based upon that very simple measurement, the fact that the people who hold more responsibility for this drug epidemic, who hold more responsibility for approving things like supplemental oxygen, are the very same people that now want the United States military defunded and want to blame everything on cannibalism and Satanism. I'm sorry. Not going to do it. I'm not going to allow it. TED Talk stands for Technology, Entertainment, Design. Thank you, Pete. That's what Jeffrey Epstein's all about. That's exactly what Jeffrey Epstein is all about. 1984. Saul Williams. That's a good one. That's definitely a good one. Thank you. But at this time, they're becoming like a big thing. They weren't a big thing at first. They became a big thing. And the Jeffrey Epstein shout out, because this is when all these tech companies are going bananas. This is when the absurd amount of money is being poured into these things, in the 90s and the early 2000s. So let's see here. Yeah, I did not think Ted Turner invented TED Talks. I didn't think that either. That's a good question, Christy. I would have thought that as well. Yeah. Eggstein. It's all Lederberg. Jeffrey Epstein is not a criminal mastermind. I think he's probably better than the average person. This is probably cold now. Yeah. Ugh. What is it? Hot chocolate needs to be hot. It's all Joshua Lederberg. And the volume is going to be turned up. The paranoia is continue to go. What did 9/11 accomplish? Well, what it accomplished was it saved the United States of America for sure. Lederberg is, a lot of people say he's Jewish, but he actually considers himself ethnically Palestinian. So how Lederberg falls with respect to the whole Israel issue is quite complicated. I suspect that Lederberg, you know what? Here's. Let's put it this way. It's a great question, Mao. It's a great question. I think one thing that Lederberg felt conflicted with, okay, from what I've read, is that oftentimes he felt as though he was smarter than, not just smarter than other people in the room, but I believe that he felt he was more of the adult than the other people in the room. And let's examine some of the. I mean, Lederberg, he was always well dressed. His mannerisms were impeccable. His control of the English language was, it was so precise. He spoke incredibly professionally. He followed up every single communication. he held himself to a very high, the adult in the room professional standard. And I think one of the best examples right now is Kevin McKernan, who is, because of the success of his own dad, wound up having an opportunity to also get involved in, cancer research and immunology, Human Genome Project. And Kevin McKernan is not an adult in a room. He goes to Star Wars conferences with his plastic lightsaber. Now I got Legos behind me. I understand, I'm not sure I'm totally the adult in the room either. But let's put it this way. I'm adult enough to know I'm not the adult in the room, which means if I felt as though lives were at stake, I could become the adult in the room. And I could out-adult everybody. I could do that. I think the next generation of scientists after Lederberg have become weaker and more entitled and more spoiled and more stupid. Not all, but I think that is a true statement. I remember the people who are older than me and the computing industry. I loved working with them. They weren't necessarily better engineers, but there was a level of professionalism and realism that I got from them that I typically wouldn't get with people who were my age and in particular younger than me. And I suspect if you're Joshua Lederberg, you know that millions of lives are going to be impacted based upon national security decisions. I think Joshua Lederberg, he knew the implications of everything from population planning to experimental vaccines to space exploration. I think Lederberg was very, very aware of these things. And I think he was also aware of the limits, the potential limits of much of this research, whether it was the most fantastic claims were possible or not. So he has, this younger, hipper, we're making a lot of money type crowd, which is becoming more and more popular as companies like Microsoft grow. And then you have the military. And I think military leadership was far more comforting and far more professional, and I think was easier for Lederberg to work with. This book is not totally fiction, this Germs book. And Joshua Lederberg knew, I don't want to take any, this is Jonathan Cooey of GigaOM Biological's idea. I want to make sure I voice that before I say it. But Joshua Lederberg knew that this venture that they are participating in of collecting data from humans, human genomes, recording life data, is something that was going to be multi-generational. So Lederberg knew that he would never live long enough to see the end of what he started. So who are you going to trust? Are you going to trust military leadership that's willing to sacrifice their own life if that's what's necessary, even though they may not fully understand the implications of everything? Or are you going to trust a bunch of young, entitled, overpaid, just bought a bunch of sports cars with their IPO scientists and engineers? I suspect Lederberg felt like a fish out of water when he went to a modern tech conference in 1998. He's got Craig Venter, who thinks it's funny that Venter's using his own DNA or semen as the root of the Human Genome Project. Imagine if you're Joshua Lederberg and you're at meetings where you're talking about the priorities of all of human civilization. And then you have people like Craig Venter and then the kids of Richard McKernan. You going to trust these people with the future of this project? So if Lederberg felt as though it was important and the risks were high, he would have wanted to ensure that the military was protected of the United States of America, that it wasn't going to be killed with potentially, maybe even intentionally, with an experimental DNA vaccine, and that the security of the nation would be protected. Now, if you start going down the list of 9/11, you'll notice planes filled with Boeing employees. You're going to notice AON Insurance accounts for, 150 for 180 of the deaths. You can notice a bunch of people in the Pentagon accounting office that would have exactly been the people involved, potentially in even Pentagon investments in genomics. You start going down the list, you start to have reasonable questions about a lot of 9/11 deaths. I believe Joshua Lederberg was one of the main minds involved. He might have even suggested the whole damn thing. I don't know. I'm not willing to go that far just yet. But it's clear. Just look at Kary Mullis's behavior. Kary Mullis was willing to document in 1990 that nobody would know who Kary Mullis was if it wasn't for Lederberg. Kary Mullis said that Kary Mullis didn't even understand his own invention until Joshua Lederberg helped him see it. Lederberg is the reason why Kary Mullis understood the value of PCR. Otherwise, he would have just had a poster board and a company. He would have written a few more papers. He would have retired at 60 and just surfed into the sunset. I also have a suspicion that Kary Mullis did not actually die in 2019. I think as a national security priority, he was given a new identity, because if Kary Mullis was still alive, it was far too risky for him to even mention the name Joshua Lederberg. Or if Epstein had ever contacted him. Oh, that's good, Christy. Yeah. No, it's good. You need the business, and looking forward to the tasty treats which were sent. Thank you. Really am. So that's a lot to throw out there. And what launched this? It was just a couple of YouTube shorts I did this morning, thinking again, Kary Mullis, Epstein, Lederberg, and just based upon the censorship, it was any video where I just say in the video, it doesn't even have to be in the title, Lederberg, the rankings go down. Unless someone looks for it, they don't find it. It's Joshua Lederberg is a more censored topic on YouTube than Jeffrey Epstein. And anyone making a claim after knowing that it's really about hiding, secret cameras to protect the elites, they're wasting your time. It's really too bad. All right, that's my morning. My hot chocolate's already cold. I'm gonna have to pour myself a new one, I guess. Love you guys very much. Thanks for listening. Take care. God bless. Maybe I'll do another one later. This was just kind of off the cuff. See you in a bit. Love you.